also have Deborah Fuller, who is the Assistant Dean for Business Affairs. We also have Sasha Koch, who is the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education. We have Sarah Simmons, the Assistant Dean for Honors, Undergraduate Research and International Studies. And we also have Peter Riley, the Associate Dean for Research and Facilities. So Town Hall is an opportunity to discuss issues about the college, such as academics, advising, student opportunities, even budget-associated issues with the leadership in the college. I encourage you all to ask questions and participate in the discussion, as this is how we can provide constructive criticism and feedback to the leadership in our college. Dr. Lottie will first give a State of the College address, or a welcoming, and then a question and answer session will follow.
So thank you, I'm Dave Lottie, and I used to be the student dean. That is now the student dean. The student dean emailed me about 47 hours ago and said, what is this town hall of which I read? And I wrote back and said, that is the twice a year you, because nobody else necessarily will show up, have to show up representing the college to answer questions for an hour and a half. And so just put it on your calendar. And so that's great. There he is. And he brought along 3 of his finest from the leadership team, so it's great to have them here as well. This really is a nice opportunity for those of you who have not done it before to start to ask the questions that allow you to become more engaged in what it means to be a part of the community, which is the College of Natural Sciences. I know that there is this an amazing need to not do that. Like, if you could just complain to your friends and go to parties and study and ignore the notion that you might assume leadership sorts of skills or roles in your life while you're at UT, then maybe that would be better. In fact, it's not. What's much better is to have a group of students who are activists in the very best sense of the word, in terms of participating in what makes their college special. So I do encourage you to ask tough questions, aggressive questions, and to have a difference of opinion, because in the end, when we hear what you have to say, it matters. I'll say this on behalf of students. There are many, many ways in which faculty and administrators can show up in the president's office or the provost's office and want things and be told flat out no. Where if a student asks them those questions, the answer becomes yes. So you do need to understand that you have a voice, and whether you represent it through your councils or through student government, or you represent it as an individual with a really well-framed letter that you write to somebody in authority, you really can make a difference. I was asked to give a State of the College address, but actually that would be somewhere else 7 minutes from now. And who knows how long a State of the College address would be. What I'd like to do instead is give you a, boy, isn't the college going great address. And I bring that up in the following way. If you read in the newspapers recently, there's all this talk about how it is that interest in math and science and engineering education in this university, in this country is going down. So you see the number of people enrolling in science colleges and engineering colleges getting smaller. There was a headline in the New York Times a couple days ago. It was the #1 emails news article for that day, which was something along the lines of, math and science students are leaving, it's just too darn hard, was the actual tagline. And in fact, that is completely the opposite of what we see here in the College of Natural Sciences. You all know, I think now, that you're the largest college at UT, and that if you look at, like, there's liberal arts, there's natural sciences. This has actually been happening over the last decade. We now graduate twice as many students in this college as we did 10 years ago. That's a pretty remarkable thing. And it isn't because we are bringing in more and more and more students. We've actually been bringing in the same number of students each year for the last 4 years. What we're doing is retaining our students better and better and better. And that isn't because we're getting easier and easier and easier. It's because we're creating the kind of environment locally with our students through the different kinds of programmatic efforts that we put into place that actually make students want to stay, make them want to learn, make them want to succeed, make them want to excel. And this is something you should be enormously proud of. 15 years ago in this college, when I came into the dean's office, we were very much the college that people ran from as fast as they possibly could, were flunked out of like nobody's business, and had nary a good word to say. Nowadays, through the different kinds of programs we have, and they are legion, a number of 3- and 4-letter acronyms, 2, 3, and 4-letter acronyms, ESP, BSP, TIP, DS, and HSH, and FRI, and on and on and on. These are the kinds of programs that have allowed us to create community for our students from the moment they show up here. It doesn't work perfectly, but it works well enough that we have double the graduation rate that we had before. And I think that that is a strong testimony to the quality of what it is that we provide for our students, not just in the classroom, but through the experiential learning opportunities made available to them. This is something we continue to push hard at every turn in our interactions with the President's office. You listen to the President's State of the University addresses the last few years. He pretty much talks about the College of Natural Sciences over and over again, pointing to the programmatic efforts that sit here in this college. Sit here in a college, by the way, which charges less tuition than business, less tuition than engineering, less tuition than communications, charges a lot less, actually, than those schools, and yet provides these kinds of services to you. So this is something I think that you should really appreciate and be messengers of as you go out there and let other people know about this, know how great it is. That doesn't mean that there aren't challenges. I think anybody trying to register for the spring semester understands just how big a challenge it was getting into courses, because when you go from having 8,000 students 4 years ago to 10,000 students now, literally overnight, it doesn't come without growing pains. The good news is that the Provost Office understands this and has routed substantial amounts of money to us to help to fix these problems. Maybe not for spring as much as we'd like, although we're adding sections, but certainly by summer and then by next fall, we'll be adding $2 million of additional support for our students in the form of courses, labs, extra advisors, extra program support, extra honors initiatives, extra freshman research initiative streams. So we're starting to build back the infrastructure in the college's undergraduate education piece that I think will benefit you and the students who are coming after you. So I hope you can take that message away from here and understand and appreciate just how substantially we have changed the culture, the climate in the college for our undergraduates. I want you to be walking across stage at graduation thinking, you know, I really am a part of this community. This community is what made me the intellect that I am, the person capable of going out into a professional career, going off and furthering my education in professional school and graduate school, and know that we help to make that happen. That's really my state of the college message, is that I couldn't be prouder of what our faculty, our administrators, and our students have been able to pull off over these last 15 years to make this happen. It really is a much, much changed place, and a place where I hope you appreciate that you have a voice in terms of letting us know what we can continue to do to make things better. Because it really is our intention that if you have a concern, that you want to see something fixed, that extra class, that extra advisor, that extra whatever needs to be done to make this place better, it will hear it and respond and be able to do something about it. So I'm going to turn it over to these 4 people here. That one right there, 50 years at the University of Texas at Austin. These buildings don't get built by themselves, they get built by people like Peter sitting out there and planning for all that sort of thing. And this person right here, budget, she's the one who kept us from going broke this year and made it possible for us to get millions and millions of additional dollars from the Provost Office. Sarah is like where I put all those acronyms when I don't have another place to put them. And she said one day, once we get to 100 acronyms we're responsible for, can we like start over or something? So I'm sure all of you know Sarah, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful addition to the college. So. And you don't need to applaud for this other person. This is the student dean and nobody cares.
So now the question and answer session can begin. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, in response to budget cuts by the ASIC administrator, President Powers wrote an article in which he states that one of the new revenue streams that the university will be looking into is aggressively commercializing intellectual property. Could you maybe expand on what that means and what the consequences would be for research in the College of Natural Sciences?
Well, I can take one stab at it, but Peter, you want to try this? Intellectual property. The question is commercializing that intellectual property.
Aggressive.
Aggressive.
That's there are two parts.
Yeah. So one aspect of this is looking for faculty-led research areas that have a technological application to them and establishing greater ties to the business community that might have a similar interest in that particular research area. And so there is an office here on campus called the Office for Technology Commercialization. And I imagine what President Powers was referring to is investment in that office and trying to find patentable research here on campus. Within our college, that's certainly an area that we have a lot of opportunity for because we have over 400 faculty, just under 400 faculty, 374, and over by heart. So there are a lot of interesting areas, particularly for the Austin business community. And just last week, in fact, Dr. Simmons had an open house to try to attract business interest in some of the faculty-led research associated with the Freshman Research Initiative. And maybe you want to say a little bit about what that open house was about. But that's certainly part of what you're talking about.
The intellectual property lectures and quests.
Yeah, so the other parts of this might refer to things that we do here on campus that have more of an educational mission to them, but are areas that we might consider spinning off and making available to other campuses. So there are lots of curricula that we develop here in the college that we are focusing on making available to people who are looking to retrain themselves or looking for extra certificates that are relevant for their careers. And in our college, we have several of those kinds of certificates already. Things that you would normally take here as a course. So it's not something you pay extra for, but outside would be a great opportunity. For example, someone who wants to be a pre-med, wants to go to medical school. So those are a few things.
He is certainly involved in business students and trying to develop business models. And I think they'd be also interested in attracting CNS students in trying to work with faculty on ideas for commercialization. And in general, I do know a lot of this has to be done by funds that are made available from commercialization, which usually is results of income from patents. That's been growing very, very markedly in the past few years. I mean, it was only a few $1 million. It's what, $15, $20 million now, I think, at least. It's getting to the point where things can grow and actually bring in some top people to really make a lot of things possible that weren't possible before. And we encourage commercialization.
So getting back to your point about the open house, I think what I'm interested from the perspective of FRI and our undergraduate population as a whole in the college is the idea that you all have great ideas and creativity and energy and inventiveness, and we found a way to tap into that through some of our undergraduate research programs and through our honors programs on campus. There's this extra step. I remember talking to a student last year, and she was saying, I had this fantastic idea, and I want to give a paper. And just thinking about that, our students never think, well, some of them do, especially the CS students, but we don't typically think, I could start a company. You think, I want to write a paper. And we have to get you thinking that maybe your ideas are marketable. And maybe it's not just about publishing a paper and letting the scientific community know, but making the world a better place. And there's no reason that you couldn't make money doing that. And so it's a lot of these kinds of things. And getting towards the Texas Venture Labs, the business school has these things, the little pilot projects with a graduate student from business, a graduate student from chemistry, and a graduate student from economics. And they're working together to fire up the company. Well, we're looking at doing that here in CNS too, and we just got a small grant from a local company to make essentially entrepreneurial research initiatives where we can get some CNS students who want to try some ideas out and potentially start a company. So undergraduates, where every other college is working with graduate students, we're always just trying to get those pulled down.
And another element of that, the dean has this year hired another associate dean who is associate dean for entrepreneurship and
Innovation.
And in large part, this is about putting our faculty research out there, but also our students, and with the notion of not just preparing you to go out and get a good job, but to go out and make a good job. And that's been a big investment that we're making.
Okay, you made several examples there about students or groups of students starting up business ventures. Could you clarify for us maybe how that makes money for the college?
Doesn't necessarily have to.
Okay.
The open house last week was all about just trying to make linkages. So, a great model for us would be if a business came in and wanted to sponsor an FRI stream because they thought it had a mutual benefit to them for their business, as well as a research interest of a faculty member. A great outcome for us would be that it would keep this FRI stream going, but also then lead to lots of placement for students in companies, because there's now a greater involvement in the companies or they have greater awareness of the FRI program. So it's not always about making money for the college per se. This is about increasing student access in the workplace as much as about commercialization of ideas.
Bringing companies here, make more jobs for students, that would help us.
One of the things that's always a stark statistic for me is nationally I've told that something in the 20s of students get a job right out of college. That's not a good number, and we're certainly higher than that in this college. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but certainly a big focus for the leadership in the college is a more keen awareness of jobs and your trajectory toward jobs after college.
Traditionally, engineering students have perhaps been more sought after by companies. We would like to change that a little bit.
And it really is about the whole shift in our re-engagement in these kinds of discussions. And to thinking about, we had a conversation with one of the faculty at Marine Science Institute, and they are really the only place in Texas that teaches marine science and does research in several of the fields in marine biology and ecology. And they're in a position to create virtual textbooks of information and knowledge that doesn't necessarily have to be, we don't have to hold people hostage with this information, but we could offer it to schools and to high schools and to sell what would be essentially a textbook. So the intellectual property has value, but we don't capitalize on it, or even break even on it, or we haven't in the past. It's always just been given away.
Not our mission.
It hasn't been our mission. And
So I guess
in this college in particular,
right.
Other colleges are fine.
I guess I'd like to invert this. We're certainly happy to talk more and more about intellectual property. You can see it's been a lot of topic of conversation amongst us as to how best to think about externalizing some of the things that we do here in the college, but I'll throw it out to you all for future conversations amongst yourselves and with us. If you think of things that we, the college, could be doing to either commercialize something, put products out that might be relevant to other folks in the work sector or other companies, or if you think about potential intellectual linkages with outside companies, let us know. And we may be working on it. We might benefit from a new suggestion that we just have been completely been off our radar.
I want to put one more thing out there. When you're thinking about these small projects or like the venture labs, only a small percentage of the ideas that faculty have that could potentially make money make it through the process to have that intellectual property licensed and protected and marketed and bought into. And some of the ideas, they get passed on by the Office of Technology Commercialization, and nobody does the background research necessary to put those ideas forward. And there's the potential for students to contribute to that process as well. And to look at some of these other projects that OTC looked at for 5 minutes and said, we're going to pass on this, and the faculty don't have time to investigate. Could students help with that?
Well, actually, patent process is so expensive. I think in the past, they probably patented too much. They've been trying to be more selective in the past couple of years. I think that's probably a good idea.
And the college can benefit from the patents that we are supporting the investigation phase of a faculty member now. We will be successful and we will get a return on that. So it can happen. It just depends on how we structure it. And it's no small thing that we hope all of you will go out and be very, very successful and a member of your university. You feel
Opportunities. When I was getting ready to study abroad, when I was investigating my options, kind of what I was told a lot of was that it was better for me to sort of take classes outside of the hard sciences because either the courses wouldn't transfer or because they were not of the right caliber to match UT. But then I was in a meeting with Dean Kopp, who kind of pointed out that that was sort of a myopic view of the science offerings from other institutions around the world. So I was wondering if there's anything being done to sort of facilitate that channel.
Yes. So what we have decided to do after many, many years of really trying to change the course equivalency process in the college is to start from scratch and bypass it with a project that we're calling curriculum integration. It's not a sexy name and it doesn't have an acronym.
You need a better.
But the goal here is for us to take about 17 right now, what we're calling premier partners, that faculty have identified as peer institutions or above. So, we're like 67th in the world. So these are like number 1, number 2, number 11 abroad that are phenomenal. The faculty have collaborations there, research collaborations. They think that the education and the teaching there is excellent. So we've got these premier partners. We then have a faculty committee who's identified for each department and each degree when the best time for students to go abroad is. For most degrees, it's the junior year. And we are looking at every course in every degree that fits in that year and getting it pre-approved. Our goal is to have, for every degree in our college, a degree map that says, okay, you're what are you?
Public health.
A public health major. Your junior year, you can go to these 12 institutions, pick from these courses, and they are pre-approved. Okay. So that's our goal. We're starting with 17 institutions. We have a representative from every department. We're not working with public health as much right now because, and I'll address public health in a minute. And we're looking at about 307 courses right now. And so the goal is to have that map in place in the next year so that we really can have students go abroad and take science and flesh out sort of, take half science and half culture or something. But not that you have to take a year off from science to go abroad, which really did happen.
And it's pre-approved. This is something else that Dr. Simmons was very keen on when I first started the dean's office. That we needed to have something that you could look up, and there's the menu of courses you could do at these other universities. There's certainly other universities you could go to and also try to get courses approved. But this would be some list that you could consult and just know that you don't have to go through petition process and what have you. It's just there advertised before you start the year.
And the public health degree, because it's so new, and the courses that are required are new, it's not in a place where we can really match things. So the public health required courses are taught here by our faculty, and you have to take those too. But we are working on a public health semester that we hope, it won't run this year, but we're planning for 13.
What, do you know where it's going to be?
No, we had originally investigated Israel, but we're thinking probably not Israel. So I can tell you where it probably won't be. But we do work in all parts of the world, and we're trying to get a distribution from different continents, different countries. We are trying to make sure that the science courses are taught in English. And we think that that's very important. It's fine for you to go and take a class in another language, but if you're going to expect to come back and bring that knowledge back as a foundational course in science, then we're working mostly with institutions who offer undergraduate courses in English, and many not English-speaking countries solely.
How does College of Life Sciences plan on managing advising for the next master's class? Because I know some students not really a chance to talk to their advisors or register for the students.
We're putting proposal together for Dean Lottie, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be pretty happy about it. Advising is obviously something he's been familiar with the student dean for many years. Let me just give a little bit of numerical background to your question, because it's been what's been on my mind lately. Dean Lottie refers to the fact that the enrollment in college has gone down 20%. Our advising staff has gone down by 0.5% in the last, or 5% in the last 5 years. I can't speak tonight. We've had literally no growth in budget from the provost for the last 5 years, and correspondingly no growth in lecture classes for the last 5 years, and no growth in advising in the last 5 years, and no growth in career services in the last 5 years, because there's been no growth in budget for the last 5 years. So we are still at 21 advisors for the college overall, and our hope is to increase the advising office by a couple in the next semester. And my initial focus is likely to focus on freshman advising, because we have this group of majors who are moving from the sort of entry-level major into their departments, and that particularly has been a crunch for us. But that's something that we're still working out. But let me just finish it though by saying we recognize that the shortage of advisors has been a key issue right now, and we need to increase. And with this additional money from the provost that Dean Lottie referred to, I think that's one of our earliest focuses is going to be on increasing advising capacity. I don't know if I answered your question directly.
Yeah.
The Norman Hackerman building currently has a lot of unused space. There are a lot of empty offices, and I think the 4th and the 6th floors are completely empty at this point. What's the plan to utilize that space so that you can get a return on the giant investment?
The 4th floor is totally full. It's totally shell. The 5th floor is totally full. The 5th floor is chemistry, organic chemistry. The 4th floor is totally shell, and the 6th floor is totally shell. We're filling out the rest of it. We have a few labs shelled in the extreme west end on the 2nd and 3rd floors. We're currently finishing out an imaging center in the basement. Should be finished about June, and then there are 3 labs, one on the 2nd floor, two on the 3rd floor, which will be finished probably the end of next summer. But then that'll leave 3 labs on the 2nd floor, 1 lab on the 3rd floor, a small lab, and the total shelling of the 4th and 6th floors. That will involve large. Finishing out the Hackerman is our highest priority, but we're talking about real money. For example, to finish out the 4th floor will take about $18 million, and probably about 15 to finish out the 6th floor. And that's $18 million more than we have right now. But we hope to get the programs to allow us to do that very soon.
This isn't my area, but some of the meetings I've sat in on, I've heard Dean Lottie talk about also looking at that expenditure very critically. We have a lot of other buildings around the college that require renovation to keep up to the standards of the faculty in those areas or for the teaching mission of those other buildings. And so what he's looking to do right now is to look comprehensively across all these buildings and think about which are the best occupants for that new building versus which are the occupants that we should just keep renovating for in the buildings that they're currently in. I think that's going to take some time.
And a huge commitment from the tower. There have been some really positive indications from the tower these past couple of months since Dean has been here, that they're listening, and I would expect some movement on that sometime this year. And there's also a very close relationship to, especially the Hackerman building, or any renovation, but the Hackerman building in particular, to the recruitment, the faculty recruitment that we're doing now. We currently have 371 regular full-time tenured track faculty, and we've just been stagnant for, is it 5 years?
We were at 368 5 years ago, and we're
Yeah.
at 370 today.
And it's just
nothing.
awful. But right now, Dean Lowry with the provost and the president, the amazing support he's getting from them. We have 31 recruitments underway, and there's a relationship in who we can attract and what kind of space we can offer them. That's going to have a lot of impact on driving.
So if we recruit somebody and they agree to come, will the tower help with the renovations and recruitment package?
We don't have a firm commitment on that. But we have received some influx of money that we can help. But that is such a huge, huge thing. We need their help, and they know that.
We can't, those, the 4th and 6th floors are a major project. We can recruit for probably a couple of years on space we have by renovation. There's some space in this. Some, we're just finishing up the complete gutting and renovation of the east wing of 29 of Welch, this building. I don't know which direction I should.
It's right over there.
Right over there. That's the east wing, the west wing, but it's finishing up this Christmas. We're moving into it. We'll move the classes into it for the spring semester, we hope, pretty sure. Actually, the west wing needs it. It would take about another 15 million to do the west wing. It's another 15 million we don't have. We hope the basic infrastructure holds together for a few more years. But actually, our buildings are really in better shape than they were 5 years ago. They're in a lot better shape. We're going to shut down gearing the entire summer of this coming summer, 2012. We're replacing a lot of the electrical, all the air handlers, and that building will have a lot of new infrastructure put in during the summer. We're still adding small components in bio, but the big dollar, the big impact is going to be if we can finishing out the Hackerman building. So we also have another thing you may have, hopefully you haven't noticed, is we are going to be increasingly short of classroom space. And that's something I would love, that some of us would love to get more of. We've opened quite a few new teaching laboratories, but very few new classrooms over the past decade. We need.
So you're talking a lot about the labs in the classrooms. Is there any spots for computer labs, students can go and study or even functional science? We don't really have I know computer science, we have to do a lot of container, and that's pretty much it.
You said two different things. So let me ask which one you mean more, or maybe you mean both. You said computer labs and you said study space.
I was looking for both because that's pretty shots.
Okay, so I think there's been I'm more familiar with the former. There's been a little bit of a conversation brewing about what is it we use computer labs for on campus. So let me turn this as a question around to all of you. I have a sense that there's a lot of computer clusters around the college that are used in this very 1980s fashion, where the model is that no one has a computer and you need to go have a computer to type on for a word processor and print your documents out. But I'm not sure that we're investing smartly in our computer clusters around the college. So I'm curious about what your thoughts are about how these are most effectively used and how we would do better supporting them.
What do you use the computer lab for?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just great because we have I don't know, we have all the TAs in there, it's also fucking morning.
So the TAs?
The TAs there, the resources of the software.
They're associated with your class,
I'm sorry?
but that's associated with your class.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the software is on there as well.
Right.
Also software licensing.
Yep.
Yeah, I use it for like group projects a lot. That's like for CS classes.
Okay.
You see continued need for more computer labs. That's something I've been wondering if it's going to be obsolete.
Peter, are there must be some sort of student labs associated with the new Gatesville complex?
Yes.
Could you say a little bit about that? Because I think that would most directly address the computer scientists.
I don't know the number, but there's certainly going to be classrooms and computer labs in the new Gatesville.
And lots of meeting space.
Lots of meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so open space, study space, much more, I think, when I've seen the drawings, it looks more like the new SAC than the old Taylor Hall.
Right.
You know, where there's meeting space.
It'll be, I think, even more modern than Hackman.
Great.
And more modern, probably friendlier.
Yes, have you seen those spaces at Hackman? Like where you can go and there are whiteboards, is that what you're talking about?
It's something like
Because that space, I feel like in the college is more precious right now than the computer cluster. I come from RLM, that's where I'm a physics professor. There's zero space like that except for a few tables around some escalators where we all cluster around and talk to the students.
RLM is one of the most cramped buildings on campus.
Yeah, so that space I feel like is really precious right now, and we have to do a lot more to improve on that kind of capacity.
So think about this computer lab across the hall, you know, where it's just row after row of computers, and every time I go in there, it's not really used. Do y'all see it used packed?
Personally, I just use this computer lab to go in, print out my notes, and I see so many students doing the same exact thing that I do.
Right.
And so we've been talking with IT about having just print docs, where you just like log into your, it's just a printer, and you can like, you know, scan your card and download your stuff, but it's not a computer lab, it's just a print station.
Dr. Simmons, the thing about the spaces in the Hackman building is, I know that first year for you reasons it probably is, but
it closes.
they close. Those spaces are really wonderful, but
they
you can't
close.
access
Close
them.
at five.
What about, so is FAC the same way, all that new space in the lobby, that's FAC, is it closed or it's open?
It closes at midnight, so that's
Better, but still. What about PCL, is it, they're not that good? Yeah. Do you think that's why? Because it's the one place you can go and know you're not going to get kicked out?
Yeah.
That's weird. What about SAC? At 3 in the morning?
Yeah.
But it's also crazy busy over there. Right. Yes.
No, white spaces are.
Yeah.
I don't know what cases, hope so.
Well, so what do you think is the limiting factor in having Hackerman open? Like, was it just an arbitrary decision?
The decision was made to, I mean, the first floor is open, but the higher floors are basically labs. And there's a strong feeling among the occupants of the labs that they just so students weren't wandering around. They want it closed after hours.
And that's where those spaces are
That's
too.
where all those spaces are.
And there aren't fire doors that protect those labs, huh? They're all, because the
Common
hallway.
spaces are right around the.
I don't know whether that can be changed. That's something we'll have to look at.
But that's really
really
important. So what are the needs for those spaces and where do we put them in? And then it's important that it's at night.
Is that one of the strongest demands you think, the sort of need for study space at night?
Yes.
Because that's when you're going to meet your group. Because, yeah, so when we have group projects in class, they always have to go. It's the night when they're doing it because of the schedules.
Well, I know, but you're too busy here.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the few good things about RLM.
It's open 24 hours?
Well, it's open late, and if you're there, you're there. You're not. It's not going to kick you out. And there's lots of study space around, at least at that hour.
We've had this Aaron Rodgers in our seniors.
That's your point.
Yeah, that's why there's room there.
That's why.
Yes.
very confused with something like this. That they, you know, through college, they get certain access to at most free, basically.
We have some things like that in the College of Natural Sciences as well. So if you have suggestions about specific software packages, I'm more than happy to spend the money on what for us would be a small amount, but for you would be a big amount. So the one I'm familiar with, because it's just the area that's most used in my area is Mathematica, and we give it away for $5 or $10. So it's just the cost of burning a CD for somebody. So I don't know what specific software you might have in mind, but I'm happy to entertain it.
While I was running, which is like, I went over specific computers and this, then I was getting
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think as we move, as we're talking with IT, in moving in this sort of idea of the computer lab, that you don't have to have the software on every single computer, that these computers are going to be served, as I understand, from central servers, and so that computer could have, so you would have easier access in the remote arms or whatever.
Could that be open for 24 hours? To have to monitor someone there watching? You're watching the computers.
Yeah, I think he thinks that you can get printer stations that you just, like ATMs, like they're in the hall.
Right, that'd be great.
And there's a printer down the hall.
But to your point, one of the things that departments and students have talked about is the most important thing about those computer clusters is because they have certain software on it. And that really strikes me as 1980s model. Right, I would much rather have the VivoWare of natural sciences where you can download your software for a modest fee. And we pay the site license and you get to download it. Yeah.
Another maybe low cost to no cost option would be, I know that specifically for me, I have to get SAS to work on something, whereas maybe I could have just gotten R, which is free. So I don't know, maybe this could be like a curriculum or an institutional.
So things like your Roaster SAS and MATLAB. There's also chemistry drawing. Chem drawing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So will you record all the ideas?
Yeah. We're just talking. We'll probably forget some of these things. So.
Yeah, because I think these are things that we need to be thinking about when we're talking about the computer labs and we're talking about space.
Did you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a transfer student, and I remember at orientation, Dean Lottie was talking about how transfer students are generally unsuccessful and how to have a harder time transitioning into the College of Natural Sciences. And so the college actually loses these students because of it. And I personally didn't feel like I had any help, and I had a really hard time also transitioning. So I was wondering what ways is the college focusing on helping these students transition who come in and to be more successful?
Well, to be quite honest, this is a pretty hard problem because you are all coming in at very different stages in your career. And so some of you are coming in as juniors, some of you are coming in as just having finished freshman year. It's like trying to get your arms around a really big thing. So maybe I could ask you for your personal perspective. What is it that as you came in you wished you had more of in terms of support or advice, or what would have benefited you from your experience? Because I get so little feedback on that particular topic that anything would be helpful.
I definitely didn't really grasp I wanted the tutoring. I didn't really know anything. I don't know. I guess more so tutoring, being able to connect with professors and taking tests. I guess it was just really more on the academics side than finding things on campus, because that came with time. But
so just knowing where to connect to in terms of resources.
Yeah, resources. Exactly. I found out there's tutoring offered in Jester and things like that.
Right, and these are things that people who started as freshmen would hear about because we tend to really advertise a lot of stuff heavily in our gateway classes.
So part of the problem, I think, with transfer students is it's hard for those of us who have the resources to find the students who need them. Mm-hmm. And so with freshmen, we track them in orientation for a couple days or 6 weeks, and then we
give them advice.
mandate, but we have many of the freshman courses where you're going to talk about tutoring, who you're going to email about what. And the freshman advisors, although the transfer advisors are in the same center, are clued in so that we need to give this information to students. But then when the transfer students come, it's part about everybody's at a different spot. But also, our freshmen don't, how many of you believe that you need all the resources that we give you when you first came on campus? So it's really hard to convince students in an opening welcome session, you're going to need this resource and this one, and don't forget to come back and talk to me when you need more.
Nobody believed it.
Right. And so it's really hard because you have to tell them first and then bring back, circle back around once you believe that you need a helping hand to just show you where to get resources. So anything that you have to suggest, our college does do transfer FIGs, but again, it's hard to generate that sense of community. FRI accepts transfer students, but we don't know how to reach transfer
I didn't
students.
even know about FRI and mass transfer. Do y'all think it would be helpful if there's like a program that was almost like mandatory for like students to like join, like as a transfer student to maybe like meet with someone, what is it, like a peer guide or someone
Peer
else?
mentor.
Yeah, peer mentor, thank you. Or through email, like even if you have a busy schedule, so that they have someone to talk to, because it was kind of hard for me to even be like, oh, who should I ask? Like I didn't know where to.
We talked a little bit about expanding those things, and maybe that's a place that we really need to.
Yeah, one of the things that we're kind of excited about is the outcomes we see, like which kinds of our programs lead to better graduation rates in the college. And some of the things like Dr. Simmons is in charge of the FRI has a literally 80% higher graduation rate associated with it than students overall in college. And there are other things like the FIGs that you referred to that have, depending on the FIG that we're referring to, between 30 and 80% higher graduation rates. So maybe the suggestion of having some sort of entering cohort for transfer students would be a really good way just for those people to network and get to know what are all the resources from a centralized place. I'm glad to put something like that in place. We were talking about literally creating a FIG for a seat for every single freshman in the college. We're at 2/3 right now. So that's pretty exciting because that means 2/3 of the entering freshmen have a place like this to go to, but there's 1/3 that's not. And by next year, we'd like it to be complete.
And if you made it a FIG for every transfer student, that would get around some of the problems of, part of the power of the FIG is that everybody has 3 classes together, and you can't do that with transfer students.
Right.
But maybe if you had it for all 200 transfer students, there would be a way to sort it
If
better.
I create a transfer FIG for next year, are you willing to be a peer mentor?
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely curious. So I love ideas from you about what we should be putting into that as a database of resources that transfer students should be learning from.
And I know there's also a lot of other transfer students I talk to, so I think even if you were to advertise it and send out an email, there would be so many responses, because there's so many transfer students I talk to, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of this major, what am I doing here? And I'm like, I feel the same way.
Great.
So it's a really big problem for me, and also a lot of people I come in contact with. I don't think there's one transfer student that I met that was like, oh yeah, I aced all my classes, it was piece of cake. Like everyone struggles.
Part of it, and this is something we talk about with transfer students at orientation, and it's something that's so hard to believe, but the academic level is just simply different here at the university. And you could take calculus at ACC or some community college or someplace else, and they say it's calculus, and it is. But it might just be that our expectation level is different, and it's considered equivalent from the point of view of obtaining course credit, but if you're taking the subsequent class here at the university, it is a challenge. And I find often that I'm working with a lot of students, at least in the physics department, where I have the most familiarity, and their biggest challenge is that they took the next class in the sequence thinking that they were ready to go, and in fact there's a gap. So anyway, I would look forward to working with you on this, because I think creating FIGs for the transfer students sounds like a really good idea. Yes.
Just another transfer student here. And one thing I noticed when I was transferring in this semester, I guess, was that there was sort of a lack of coherence between the advising for a transfer student and the advising for a biology student, because my transfer designer was really good and knowledgeable about the things we were transferring, but it was really difficult for me to learn what I needed to learn about my new biology major because it was so radically different from what I knew from my home school. And because all my classes were different, I couldn't really get that sorted out immediately. So I sort of like spent my entire summer trying to piece together, sort of on my own, what I need to have done, just because I wasn't eligible to be a bio major yet.
Right. I think that this is going to be one of those areas that gets impacted most when we increase our advising staff, because this is something that has been on our minds. So I won't promise like I know that this is all going to work out, but I know that this is going to be a very big shift for us. It's how we handle transitional advising into majors. Yeah.
As a freshman student, I'm still floating between different majors, so I like to take classes that represent a variety of my interest areas. There seems to be like a huge percentage of nature-restricted classes in the university, and that makes it hard for students to move towards areas outside of their major. Are there plans or ways to more interdisciplinary approach to education?
It's not that we don't have an interdisciplinary approach, but that we're simply bursting at the seams right now. So what you're seeing happening to you right now is that you are the victim of priority registration in a lot of key classes. So I could list a lot of them, but it's sort of a statistic that might just kind of sum it all up is that there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 43% of our classes that were absolutely full. And by that I mean if there were 100 seats in the class, there were 100 students in the class as well. So we are really at a challenge to make sure that all the students who need a certain class in order to graduate get that class on time. As a result, a lot of classes are given restrictions for the majors, or the seniors get priority because they're about to graduate and they won't do so unless they get that class. And one of our big focuses with this influx of money from the provost is to relieve some of these key classes so that we have a little bit more flexibility. I worry not only from that interdisciplinary education and the ability to take a class outside your major, but I'm just worried about anytime you have that number of classes that are that full, there's delays to graduation because the class might have had one seat left in it, but it might be at a time that conflicts with another class that you need to take at that time. So this is a pretty big problem for us right now, and I hear your concern from the point of view that there's just no opportunity to do electives when things are that close. But I'm one step more worried because there are students that just can't graduate.
And I know that there's other colleges that have like this kind of shopping period where like for a month you take a variety of classes that you're interested in, but you're not like actually enrolled for the whole semester. So I guess students can like experience other types of interests without actually like picking up the classes for the major.
So they get flushed out after a month,
So
or
you
what
get to
happens
go
after
to
a
the
month?
class, you get to attend the
I
class.
don't really know much about it, but I know one of my friends is like university. I know MIT has it for like a couple weeks or so to take a class, like a variety of classes. Like
MIT has the shopping period, Yale has a shopping period.
So you're actually sitting in on a different class that you're not registered for?
You don't.
Right, you're not registered for anything.
I really don't know details there.
Okay, we'll have to look at this, because one of our issues is space. And so the class could be bigger if the room was bigger.
Yes.
And so we couldn't just put more bodies in there, but it would be interesting to have like the first week of classes, you don't have to keep your class. You could just go to whatever class. So we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, shopping sure. Yeah.
My question concerns some of the programs for freshmen and student transitioning energy, where they're only a semester long, or most of them are only in the fall semester, like first interest groups, and some of the students still need some help in the second semester transition. Is there anything that the College of Natural Sciences is doing to make it further into next semester, or kind of just maybe make it just more?
We would like all things to be a year, if not 2. So that doesn't mean that you're locked in to be there for the entire time, but there will be a fixed seat for you for that year or even 2. So that's when I talk about the increase in the advising office, one of the reasons for that is not only to increased capacity for students getting advising, but also because those folks are very involved in supporting the FIG program. So yes, that is a focus, but we're really looking toward a number of things, and I don't know if we're going to talk about tuition increases in this forum, but when we were asked, for example, what would the college do if tuition increase was levied at the university, and how would that improve student success in graduating on time in 4 years? That staffing was brought up because it would be a big deal for us if we could offer more figures to students and keep them sustained through the first couple of years.
So we do offer fall figs and spring figs and sophomore figs, 6. So there's even a couple jigs where students have wanted to stay all day. And so, but it just, this resource issue, we know that students in figs are 4 times more likely to graduate on time.
Yeah.
So there are these places we could put tuition money that would benefit students.
Right. So when you hear about the discussion about tuition increases at the university, should these come about, and I don't really know the status of that. I can simply inform you of what we proposed if a tuition increase were to come about. All of the proposals were not because we want to start suddenly paying everyone more by 2.6%, but rather because we want to keep certain programs going, or because we want to increase the scale at which they're offered. And FIG programs and advising are for us 2 very important examples.
So we actually don't have time for any more questions, but thank you all for coming. We will also have a town hall next semester in spring. So thank you all for coming, and especially our